What's going on, everybody, and welcome to J Sports Seattle. In this video, I'm gonna be following up on the hiring of Mike Macdonald. He just had his press conference. It just ended around just a little over 40 minutes ago as of the making of this video. It started at 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time and then 12 o'clock Arizona time. He said a lot of things that I really liked and really caught me and really sold me on him as being our head coach, and that we made the right choice. So yeah, I'm just going to be talking about the press conference, about what both John and what Mike had to say. So if you like the video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share for more Seahawks and Seattle sports content. And without further ado, let's get on with the video. Alright, so as we know, Mike Macdonald is our head coach. I'm going to go over to my good friend. Obviously, he doesn't know me, but I use Bob Condota a lot. Reference his page a lot on Twitter / X when I talk about stuff in my videos. So shout out to Bob. First things first, before I head into the presser, Zach Orr. He was speculated to have potentially could follow Macdonald to Seattle to be our defensive coordinator, but he will replace him in Baltimore. So he got promoted, and I think the Ravens were making sure that this guy was not going to leave, either him or Anthony Weaver, just because of the fact that they just lost Macdonald, and they're probably going to lose more. They're probably going to lose a lot more coaches because of how good they've been this season. So they're trying to keep as many people as possible. I still think we could go after Anthony Weaver because he's an assistant head coach / D lineman coach there. I think he could be our defensive coordinator here. We'll see what happens. They're still trying to figure it out. But yeah, but it is confirmed that Zach Orr will be the defensive coordinator for the Ravens. But moving on to the press conference, there's a lot to talk about in this press conference that I'm going to break down, put my thoughts on it. Firstly, let's start with what John said. He said how he wanted both the Lions and the Ravens to lose on Sunday, which, that's just a testament of how much he wanted Ben Johnson, or he wanted to interview Ben Johnson and wanted to interview Mike Macdonald. Because basically, by him saying that, he basically confirmed that these are the two guys we're going to go for. We weren't going to go for anyone else. We weren't going to go for Dan Quinn. We weren't going to go for Evero. We weren't going to go for Patrick Graham or Mike Kafka. These are the two guys that we wanted to go for. They probably interviewed those guys to meet the Rooney Rule. But yeah, I feel like him saying that, one or the other was going to be our head coach. Obviously, Ben Johnson opted to stay in Detroit for another year, and then they met because they flew to Detroit on Monday afternoon, had an interview there. Then they flew to Baltimore that night, had an interview, and then had an interview there on Tuesday morning. And then as soon as I saw, like I said in my last video, having an interview with a potential head coaching candidate on back-to-back days means you're going to sign him. That means you like what he said. And I mean, he literally flew from Baltimore to Seattle. They literally flew Macdonald from Baltimore to Seattle the day after they interviewed him. And that was a sign that, yes, he's going to be our head coach. And sure enough, we signed him to a 6-year deal, which is perfect, by the way. But yeah, it goes to show that. But coming back to this, Schneider saying that he wanted both the Lions and Ravens to lose proved that one of those guys were going to be our head coach. And sure enough, Mike Macdonald was our head coach. And yeah, this is the future right here. This is where it's going. And honestly, this is the future. Mike Macdonald is the future. And he is going to I feel like he's going to turn this franchise around, especially on the defense. Like I said, he said a lot of things that I liked hearing. One thing that really stood out to me was how he hasn't even taken a tour of the facility yet. Because him and John were going through a coaching staff trying to figure out who the coordinators are going to be. That is a very good sign of who we have as our head coach. It just goes to show the etiquette, the work etiquette, and the work ethic that Mike Macdonald is bringing to the Seahawks. He wants to skip the formalities. He wants to get straight to business because he wants to bring this team a Super Bowl, or bring this team into Super Bowl contention. And that's what really stood out to me. That was one thing that stood out to me. He had to he thanked everybody on the Ravens. Obviously, that's what you got to do. I mean, they gave him, he's the reason, the Ravens are the reason why he's here. He is here where he is right now. I mean, they gave him he was a coaching intern in 2014, eventually worked his way up, eventually became a D-lines coach, a DB's coach, and eventually became the defensive coordinator. So obviously, you got to thank from where you came from. Yeah, it is a leap of faith, but this is a special city. So yeah, because considering that he is from the East Coast, his family is from the East Coast. That's where he's lived at his entire time, for the majority. I mean, for the past decade, that's where he's been at. And he's right. Seattle is a special city, and he knows that. That's the reason why he was willing to fly 5 hours across the country to come be our head coach, because he really recognized how special the organization is and how much it paralleled the Ravens organization. He did say that the parallels between the interview process and the hiring process between the Ravens and the Seahawks are pretty similar, and that said that drew him to Seattle. And I like to hear that from him. He said, "We will not step until we get to where we want to get." I mean, that's just how it is. Like, you're not going to be where you're going to be until you are where you are, until you get to where you said you're going to be. That's literally that, and I respect the hell out of what he's saying there. And so this is huge. Macdonald says his plan for now is to keep calling the defensive plays. That is what he should do. Because I mean, he's our head coach. That's what he's got to do. He's a defensive head coach. He's gonna call the plays. But I feel like we should do a sort of Belichick-Brady situation, or an Andy Reid-Spagnuolo situation. He focuses only on the defense, and we get an offensive coordinator that focuses only on the offense. Obviously, in Kansas City, it's the opposite, where Andy Reid focuses on the offense and Spagnuolo focuses on the defense, but it's the same principle of each of the head coach specializing in his field and the coordinator specializing in his field. That is how we're going to do things, and that I feel like that's going to be better. That's going to be a betterment for the team going forward. Macdonald says he has not met Pete Carroll, but calls him a Hall of Fame coach. Says he won't try to be like him. I mean, I like this because you are acknowledging how great of a coach Pete Carroll is, but you're also acknowledging that there is a reason why you were brought in to not be like Pete Carroll, to be you, be Mike Macdonald, and bring a brand new defense, a brand new defensive scheme and defensive ideas to this team. So I respect what he said here, and he wasn't trying to put down Pete Carroll, but he was just saying he doesn't want to be like Pete Carroll, because first off, being like, if you want to be like Pete Carroll, that's trying to mimic someone that you're not, who is a legendary head coach, and I respect him for saying that. So very good to hear that from him. I'm trying to think of what there are other things that he said. Oh yeah, and he talked about Geno. He talked about the quarterback position. He talked about how it is his job, and I mean, obviously it's not just his job; it's also John Schneider's. But he did take responsibility for himself because he is the head coach now. It is his job to surround Geno with the quality pieces for him to succeed. I feel like Pete didn't really do a good job of that, and John Schneider too. But that's because Pete had a lot of influence on who he got for the draft and free agency. I feel like having him, being younger and having a younger mind, fresher ideas, willing to adapt, open minds, is going to definitely help out both sides of the ball. Even though he's a defensive mind, I feel like his input on the offense could go a very long way. And one thing that I want to bring up about Mike Macdonald, and the difference between Mike Macdonald and Pete Carroll, is Mike Macdonald makes adjustments. Pete Carroll doesn't, or at least he hasn't been for the past 6 or 7 years. If you noticed, I'm sure, I don't know if you guys have watched the Niners-Ravens game earlier in the season on prime time, where the Ravens absolutely humiliated the Niners. There was a time where they decided to send a blitz in the A and B gap with the middle linebacker, Macdonald. But what the thing is, the Niners took advantage of that by doing an open screen pass to Kittle, and he did that for a huge gain. But do you know what he did? Do you know what Mike Macdonald did to counter that? instead of doing the same thing, which is what Pete Carroll seems to have been doing, always going the same thing over and over again and being predictable, and instead of sending pressure up the middle, he sent pressure on the edges, and that absolutely just ruined the Niners' night. See, defensive adjustments like that is what we've been wanting from Pete Carroll, but he just hasn't been providing it. That's just how it's just coaching style. That's just how it is. Pete's been in the league for 14 years, and his coaching style was going to get found out. And you literally have Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay both have winning records against Pete Carroll, and they just knew how to figure him out because his coaching style is outdated. So the fact that we have Mike Macdonald, who people say that, like I said, I think I said this in my last video, people say that he is the Sean McVay of defense because of how smart he is. And not only that, his own players acknowledge how smart of a person he is and how much knowledge he is instilled in them to become a better player. Like Kyle Hamilton explained how the one thing that he noticed, that the one thing that Mike stood out to him was how knowledgeable he was about the game and how it changed him as a player. And Kyle Hamilton, I think he's an all-pro safety. If not, he's definitely all-pro caliber safety. They had 4 all-pros in that defense. They had two middle linebackers that made all-pro, and Patrick Queen and Roquan. And then they had a very good cornerback in Marlon Humphrey. Like, they had a stacked defense. And that's because of Macdonald taking their strengths and putting them where they can maximize their strengths. Pete Carroll wasn't doing that with our players. Like Tariq Woolen does better in man coverage because of how fast he is, but he had him in coverage. That doesn't work. Like for a corner that can run a 4.2, what was it? A 4.26 40 or something, like 4.3 40. That doesn't work for a guy like that. You have to press him and put him in man coverage. Same with Witherspoon. I feel like, oh my goodness, Mike Macdonald and Witherspoon are gonna absolutely tear it up. Oh my goodness, I cannot wait to see what he schemes up for Witherspoon, Woolen, Mafe. We still got Jones. Uchenna Nwosu will be back. Maybe we'll re-sign Bobby, or it may potentially, some of the Ravens players could follow over, like Madubike, or I think that's how you pronounce it. I think that's how you say his name. Correct me if I'm wrong. Or the defensive tackle, or Patrick Queen, or Jadeveon Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney was in his 30s. And before them was struggling throughout the league. And under Mike Macdonald, Jadeveon Clowney had the best season of his career in his mid-30s. That's just a testament of how well Mike Macdonald can bring out the strengths and the abilities in these guys. And Mike Macdonald, he's a funny guy. He's a funny guy. I mean, he made me laugh a couple times, and he made John crack up a couple times. That's what we need. We need someone that can, be lighthearted and, make you laugh, make you feel like a family, make you feel like you can be easy around him, but also be serious. Know when it's time to be serious. I feel like sometimes Pete would be a little lackadaisy and be a little unserious when we needed him to be serious. I can't blame him for that because that's just who Pete is. Pete is a 30-year-old in a 72-year-old's body. I feel like he's a very youthful guy at the age of 72. But it's just like sometimes he would use that a little too much, and it would rub some of us 12s the wrong way. I feel like I feel like the players too, and especially that locker room. I feel like Pete might have potentially lost that locker room. I mean, we literally were smoking cigars after we won against the Cardinals, but we didn't make the playoffs. And I saw that the reason why they got those cigars was to celebrate a playoff appearance, which they didn't. Why? Because we lost games that we shouldn't have lost. We should have won that Bengals game. We should have won that Steelers game. We should have won that Rams game. We were up 13-0 in the first half in that second Rams game, and we choked. That stems down to coaching. The penalties were horrible. That stems down to discipline, and I feel like Pete just wasn't really good with instilling discipline into the players. Mike Macdonald explained how physical he's going to make this team, and how we're going to be a really physical team on both sides of the ball. I would assume that we're going to run the ball a lot, considering that he's a defensive mind, and defensive minds usually like to rely on the running backs more than anything. But he'll probably know when to adapt, know when to run the ball, know when not to. because, like I said, he is a younger mind, so he is open-minded, bringing fresh ideas to the table. And he knows how to adapt. Like I said, if you literally look at the Chiefs game, look at the conference championship game. Yes, they allowed 17 points in the first half, but did not let the Chiefs score at all in the second half. The only reason why the Ravens lost that game is because the offense choked. Lamar threw a pick. Zay Flowers had an unsportsmanlike conduct that would have put him in at the 10 in KC territory, and then after that, he fumbled the ball for a touchback. That completely sealed the game. Like, Mike Macdonald and the defense did everything they could. Limiting the Chiefs' offense to 17 points is no joke. Because like I said, the Chiefs have the Chiefs have an offensive mind in a Hall of Fame quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. You limit them to 17 points. No one else has done that. No one else has done that. Look at what the Chiefs did to the Dolphins. Look at what the Chiefs did to the Bills. Against a defensive mind on the Bills. They put up 27. The Bills allowed 27 points to the Chiefs, but that's just a testament of how good the Chiefs' offense is. And the Ravens held the Chiefs' offense to under 20 points, which is incredible. 0 points, scoreless in the second half. That's insane. Because he can make adjustments. Because at first, Travis Kelce was lighting him up in the first half. I think he was like 11 for 11. But Travis Kelce got shut down in the second half. You can argue that the Chiefs were playing a bit more conservative, but that's not a good argument, considering that it was only a one-score game. And that they literally almost scored. It's just that Zay Flowers fumbled the ball. So you can say that the Chiefs were being a little bit, and Andy Reid were being a little bit more conservative, but I don't think so. Because then if the Ravens score, tie it up, what do? You know? Ravens defense held in that second half, and he's going to be bringing that over to Seattle. But he said a lot of things that I really liked. Like I've already mentioned them. He said a lot of things that John liked. John even acknowledged that what he said was saying like good stuff. Like, yeah. And this goes to show of how this was John's guy all along. Between him and Ben Johnson, I think he was always leaning towards Mike Macdonald. Because especially if Ben Johnson did opt for a head coaching gig and decided to go to Washington, who now Washington has Dan Quinn. I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit in this video too, since he's a former Seattle defensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator during the Legion of Boom. But like I was saying, this just goes to show how much John Schneider wanted this, at least to speak to this guy. He literally said that they were willing to wait until the Super Bowl. And so after the Super Bowl, just to have a chance to talk with Mike Macdonald. And sure enough, and that's why he wanted the Ravens to lose, because he wanted to interview Mike Macdonald. And sure enough, here we are. So Mike Macdonald has really come to Seattle on his first day. It's already made a huge impression on me as a head coach. Like I said earlier, he hasn't even taken a tour of the facility and was strictly with him and John and working on the coaching staff. He said he couldn't even tell you where the indoor was if you asked him. And that's the type of coach we need, who's willing to set aside the formalities so that way we can get this ball rolling. So I think this is a very good pickup for our team. Yes, I wanted an offensive coach. I wanted Ben Johnson. But I also want a coach that can take this team to the next level and bring new ideas, bring an open mind, and that's what we have in Mike Macdonald. So, very, very good hire by John Schneider, and we will definitely find out who our coordinators will be within the next couple of days. If not by the end of the day, probably tomorrow. We already lost. We lost our running backs coach and Chad Morton. He's gone. Where did he go? I don't remember where he went, but he's gone. I think he might have went to the Packers. I could be wrong though. No, I know the Packers hired the Boston College defensive coordinator from Boston College, or the guy from Boston College to be their defensive coordinator. But Chad Morton's gone. Our OC is vacant. Our OC is vacant and our DC is vacant. So we're probably going to expect a signing here in the next for those positions in the next couple of days, or by at least tomorrow, maybe, if not by next week. But I'm speaking of Dan Quinn. As you know, Dan Quinn went to Washington, and there's a reason why we passed up on Dan Quinn, because he doesn't want someone under the Pete Carroll coaching tree. He wanted someone that was outside, brand new. And the thing with Mike Macdonald is he comes from a hefty coaching tree background. First off, he came from John Harbaugh, and John Harbaugh coached under Andy Reid back when he was on the Eagles as their special teams coordinator for a majority of the 2000s. And Andy Reid was on the team as a tight ends coordinator and passing coordinator with Mike Holmgren on the Packers when they won a championship back in '97. So Mike Macdonald is coming from an extensive coaching tree background, and I think this was huge that we were getting a coach that not only delves from. He also does linebackers. He said that he picked up linebackers was really his main thing going into after being a coaching intern, but also being under coming from a coaching tree that's gone back decades. So this is huge that we are going for him instead of another Pete Carroll tree, because we don't want it to be a first round exit. Look at Dan Quinn's defense against the Packers in that wild card. Got absolutely torched. Yeah, I know Dak Prescott threw a pick six and the offense wasn't really doing its job in the first half. But in the second half, Dan Quinn got absolutely smoked and outcoached. So, and I'm sure John Schneider wanted to bring him back to Seattle, but knew he couldn't, because he knew that it wasn't gonna. A lot of the fan base would have been would not have liked that, and he probably wanted to go someone new, someone younger, in which we did. So I applaud John Schneider for going out and getting this guy, and so far John Schneider is continuing to prove why he's one of the better GMs in the league. I mean, he's a Super Bowl winning GM. So hopefully we will figure out what will be happening next in the next coming of days and weeks. The Pro Bowl's on Sunday, and then the Super Bowl is the Sunday after, and then after that it's go time. It is go time. I'm sure we're gonna be doing a lot of we're going to be cutting some people and bringing in some new people. I'm excited to see what we're going to do for the draft, because Mike Macdonald and John Schneider share a very similar mindset entering the draft. I mean, John Schneider was saying in this press conference of how the GM, he was in contact with the Ravens GM, and the Ravens would sometimes pick the players over us that we wanted to get. Basically, John Schneider wanted some of the players that the Ravens got on defense, but we couldn't because they jumped the gun and they got him before we did. So I feel like having Mike Macdonald's mind and having John Schneider's drafting ability is partners in crime right there, and I feel like that's going to definitely help this team out. And not only that, Mike Macdonald is gets reunited back with Mike Morris. He was on that 20. Mike Morris was there when Mike Macdonald was the Michigan defensive coordinator. So we got continuity there, and we got history there. So that's also really important. And I think Mike Morris is. I think Mike Macdonald is going to bring up the best in Mike Morris. I know Mike Morris had that season-ending shoulder surgery, but that's okay, because he's entering his second year on his 4-year deal, and we have a good head coach now. So this is huge. I'm excited to see Mike Macdonald to be a Seahawk. I'm glad that nobody else got him, because I was not going to be happy with Dan Quinn. I feel like I would have been okay with Dan Quinn, but it would have been like, man, there's someone else out there better, like Mike. I would have been like, yeah, there was Mike Macdonald, there was Ben Johnson. I would have been like that. So, but honestly, Mike Macdonald was the best coach on the market, especially after Ben Johnson opted to stay in Detroit. So I'm glad that we definitely jumped the gun, and I'm glad the other teams like the Falcons, the Falcons, the Panthers, the Patriots, the Titans, I'm glad they did not go for him. And that I wonder, maybe it's because he didn't want to go for them. I think he wanted to go to a more prestigious franchise like the Seahawks, and take a team that's, borderline playoff contention, and then take them to the next level, because we're borderline playoffs. We're a borderline playoff. We were a playoff team back in last year in 2022, and we were 9-8 this year and missed the playoffs by a game. So we're a borderline playoff team, and I feel like under him there's going to be some growing pains. I'm not expecting us to have a winning season next year. I actually am expecting us to, at most, we could go 10-7, like the Texans did with D'Amico in his first year. But I wouldn't be surprised if we only won like 6 or 7 games. But even then, Pete's worst season, he even won 7 games. So if Mike Macdonald can come in and win 7-8 games off the bat as a first time head coach, that's a good sign for the Seahawks, especially since he's on a 6-year deal. So, but I just wanted to go over this and talk about this. I will make more updates as we get more news on who we're like for coordinators and what we do with our players and roster. But I think that's all I have for this video. Like I said, stay tuned for a Mariners video, as I will definitely be making one. I'll probably try to drop one next week. I got exams coming up, so I'm gonna be grinding those out. But stay tuned for that. And comment below on if you watched the press conference and how you feel about what Mike Macdonald had to say about this team and how he is going in as a first-year head coach. And if you liked the video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share for more Seahawks and Seattle sports content. Thank you for stopping by. Have a good day. And go Hawks, go Mariners, and go Kraken.